who's the manager in a lot of states, and that's it. So you've got supposedly an LLC, but let me ask you this: how do you think that's going to protect you when you're hauled into court and they say, "Let me see all your LLC documents"? You're going to hand them a page that says, "Here's the name of the LLC," and now you think you have protection?
Right.
Sorry.
Well, I want you to know, and I've got the T-shirt that says "Ask me how I know." If somebody is in Texas, is a Texas LLC going to serve their needs most of the time?
Well, once again, what kind of business are you doing? Are you buying rental properties in Texas? Then yes, you better darn well have a Texas LLC. Reason is you're doing business in the state, and the state wants to make sure that they understand that the Texas residents are protected and are not being taken advantage of. Furthermore, if you have an out of state entity to own Texas properties, for instance, and this applies in any state, you cannot avail yourself of the Texas courts because you do not have a Texas entity. So you have no standing. You're not a resident of Texas. You're not a citizen of Texas. So you can't sue to foreclose. You can't sue to evict a tenant. So you darn well better have an entity in the state where the rental property is located. That's critical.
That's interesting. All right,
Yeah.
but now if you are, if as I say, you're doing seller financing, this is a question I didn't plan on asking you. But if you're doing seller financing, and you have an LLC that's incorporated in, say, Georgia, but the property's in Pennsylvania, and you've got to foreclose on that loan, are you saying that I need to? Well, not me. This hypothetical person needs to have a Pennsylvania LLC because how do the banks do it?
Well, I mean, typically the banks, are incorporated in 50 states, and they've got the ability to avail themselves of any court system. But depending upon where the lawsuit has to be filed, and I don't know if it's in a Georgia bank or a Georgia court because the loan was made in Georgia. I mean, that's always a question. Where do we file the case? That has to be answered. That always usually requires some pretty important research. But if you have to go to a Pennsylvania court to do the foreclosure, then you're out of luck unless you've registered that Georgia LLC as a foreign entity in Pennsylvania. So this
Well,
is kind
that's
of getting into
interesting.
the weeds, but that's the way it's done.
Yeah, that's interesting to me.
Hmm.
Something I'll be sure to be talking to my people about. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about the actual protection that an LLC can give, because one of the things that's also floating around on the internet right now is how easy it is for lawyers to penetrate the corporate shield that's offered by a single member LLC.
Very, very true. The
Oh,
the
maybe we should
problem with
define what that means. Go ahead,
Yeah,
if you don't
single
mind.
member LLC means that you are the only member, or there's only one owner of the LLC. Members are the same as shareholders in an LLC. Shareholders are in corporations, owners are members in an LLC. So if there's only one member of the LLC, there are a number of theories or rationales for why that LLC may not protect. One of them is that there's no innocent party to protect, which was the original rationale for extending limited liability protection in the first place in a limited partnership. There's no innocent party. If the LLC did something wrong, it's you. I mean, you are the only actor in that LLC.
That's the
So
best
it's
explanation of
much
that
more
I've
likely,
heard.
yeah, much more likely they would pierce the veil of protection of the LLC. So I usually advocate to use a multi-member LLC. They're generally stronger in most states. Right at this moment, only 5 states actually recognize single-member LLCs by statute as being just as protective as multi-member LLCs. And so it's really much, much better to use a multi-member LLC in most circumstances.
But what if your single member of your LLC is a
Ah,
multi-member LLC?
there you go. Now, that makes a big difference because that's called two-tiered structuring. And now that gives you significantly better liability protection than if you yourself were the single member. In addition, that kind of a structure means that the single member LLC doesn't have to pay a federal or file a federal tax return, which lowers your operating costs. So there are some advantages, but if you're going to use a single member LLC, don't try this at home. In other words, use an experienced lawyer who knows what they're doing and how to set it up properly.
All right. So now it's time for a little bit of a confession. I've already patted myself on the back for, being relatively bulletproof, but the fact is, when I started into this game and started deciding to protect myself, I had no idea what I was doing. And somebody told me I could go form my own LLCs at Secretary of State's website in Georgia, which is true. It's not that hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I ended up with sort of a mishmash of stuff. If somebody came to you with a mishmash of stuff and it needed reorganizing, can you help them scrub the floors and get their house in shape?
Yeah, that's a big part of what we do. People come to us with LLCs they've set up by themselves, and we restructure them, fix them, so to speak. We make sure that they are getting all the tax benefits they're entitled to, make sure that they really have liability protection, whereas most of the ways people set up LLCs, they don't provide any liability protection. When somebody goes to the Secretary of State website, really, it's simple. I mean, once again, it's a matter of what's the name of the LLC, what's the address of the LLC, who's the registered agent, who's the manager in a lot of states, and that's it. So you've got supposedly an LLC, but let me ask you this: how do you think that's going to protect you? When you're hauled into court and they say, "Let me see all your LLC documents," you're going to hand them a page that says, "Here's the name of the LLC," and now you think you have protection?
Right.
Sorry.
Well, I'll let you in on a little secret, Bob, that all of us non-attorneys know. When we go to these government websites and there's a form there and everything seems kind of straightforward to you, we're going, what the heck does that mean? The first
Right.
time I did this, I was thinking, what's a registered agent?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I get registered if I want? Can I be my own? Is that even allowed? I'm not registered anywhere. And who knows what that means, but I'll just write something down and see if I get away with it. And guess what?
Well, and
It went
that's right.
through.
Yeah, well, and it does go through. I mean, I've seen very badly formed LLCs get approved because the Secretary of State doesn't do a qualitative analysis of your LLC. They just say, "Did you fill in this blank?" And if you did,
Yeah.
even with nonsense, they'll approve it.
And
So
is
the
that
way I
name
like
being
to,
used?
yeah, exactly. The way I like to analogize it is this: if you're going to build a house, you start with a foundation, and then you build the house on top of the foundation. And if you go to the Secretary of State website and just fill out a form and that's all you don't have a house, you have a slab, you have the foundation of an LLC, but that's not any kind of an LLC that's going to do much good for you.
So what are the other pieces that need to be there? I'm not assuming that we can do these, but are you talking about like operating agreements?
Oh yeah, yeah, and it needs to be a carefully drafted, customized operating agreement, not a cookie cutter thing that everybody gets. It needs to be there needs to be minutes of an organizational meeting, membership registry. Needs to be minutes of a manager's meeting, minutes of a members meeting, various resolutions to open a bank account, resolution to purchase real estate, maybe a resolution to reimburse educational expenses, resolution to apply for credit for the company. And then membership certificates, ledgers, and oftentimes we do an estate planning component, which is a designation of successor and interest, which means if you and your wife, Roger, I don't know if you're married, but if you are, and then there you go. If you pass away, who inherits your shares of the LLC or your membership interest in the LLC? And that's what the designation of successor and interest does for you. So we draft about a dozen different documents when we create an LLC, and that is the kind of documentation that will protect you, not a one-page LLC.
Okay, Bob, let's review. You said there were 3 components to the good defense.
Yep.
They are
Tax reduction and lawsuit protection and good estate planning as well.
all right. Now we've talked about lawsuit protection.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk for a few minutes about tax reduction. But let me say this: if you have questions, if you're watching on, I want you to know, and I've got the T-shirt that says "Ask me how I know."